Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Please Watch This, where two film-loving mates with gaps in their viewing history recommend films to another, so they can once and for all answer the question, who has better taste? With me as always is my friend and co-host Sam Blakely. Hello Sam.
Hello Hugh.
How are you today?
I'm very well. This is an unusual episode. Do you want to explain why it's an unusual episode?
Because I can see your face.
Yeah, and I can see your face.
Yeah, it's like we know each other. IRL.
IRL, yeah. We are. This is the first episode we're recording together. Hopefully, it's going to be quite good.
Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of intense eye contact.
It's like quite close sharing this mic, and it's quite an intimate episode.
So. Yeah,
we're
going to crack on with it. So this
you want to tell us what film we're looking at this week?
Yes. So after the end of last week's episode, where you basically didn't know anything about Star Wars,
Felicity Jones was in it. That's all I knew.
Yeah. So I was hoping I could dangle her in front of you in a non.
It was effective.
Yeah. We'll see, won't we? Yeah. As a way to get you to actually engage with my true love Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do the film directed by Gareth Edwards called Rogue One, just Rogue One. I think a Star Wars story got dropped from it.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because they did that with Solo, a Star Wars story.
They didn't want to associate with the. Have they cut off ties? Have they forgotten about Solo? Are they pretending it didn't happen?
No, I don't think they're not pretending it didn't happen. But I think they're saying, look. We know we dropped the ball on this one.
Right. I'm assuming we're not going to watch that in a later episode.
Yeah, I don't want to make you watch that.
Do you find out about Han's younger life in that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's stuff that you didn't want to know.
Okay.
It ruins a bit of the magic.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
If it wasn't Han Solo, it's a cool film. It's actually quite fun.
If it was Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
that's an Indiana Jones story.
Yeah, or even if it was a bit like Rogue One, where it's new characters,
right.
You would enjoy it.
Fair enough. So this week we are looking at a Rogue One. Hugh is a huge Star Wars fan. We've spoken in previous episodes about my distaste for Empire Strikes Back. I know very little about Star Wars going in. I've now seen one more film than I had before. Hugh, what does Rogue One mean to you?
So, Rogue One to me is a film where you get a bit more of a grown-up version of Star Wars. Because for all the greatness of Star Wars, it's very much a film for kids to a point. And Rogue One is an attempt to make a war film of a Star Wars film / heist film as well. So it's like a heist / war film, isn't it?
Is it equivalent to what Nolan did to Batman?
It definitely comes out of that, but I think it's more that they're trying to just... It does have... Yeah, it's not... It's probably an indirect child of the gritty kind of...
It's very in vogue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Grittifying things.
Yeah, and it might be 10 years too late. I don't think so, because it treats its audience as, look, you've seen Star Wars, you may have seen The Force Awakens the year before. Here's a more grown-up version of it.
From a chronological point of view of release date, do you know anything about why they released Force Awakens before this? Because this sort of makes sense to come before the new set of sequels.
It was literally just because they decided to make the Force Awakens, and then they were like, oh, we should do some solo standalone movies, and they were looking for ideas, and this one came after the.
Is that inspired by the commercial success of Marvel, do you think?
Possibly.
Because they're a lot of standalone that come together. Star Wars has just come together.
So George Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney in 2012 for $4 billion. That's billion with a B.
Billion with a B. I mean, was he...
Not with a D.
Was he majority owner? It's called Lucas? Did he have all of it? I mean,
he essentially was the majority shareholder of all his companies that came out of the success of Star Wars.
That's quite successful.
Yeah, and he was basically retiring because he was in his mid-60s, and he was like, I'm done with this now.
I think I would do that. I mean, it's weird that there's very few creatives, filmmakers who retire. It seems like I feel like Jack Nicholson's retired now. But generally actors don't seem to retire, they just die.
Or become unpopular.
Yeah.
Like, well, he's not an actor, is he? But I think he retired, Sean Connery. famously.
Oh yeah.
In 2002 or 3, and he's just been living it up in the Bahamas ever since.
And he hasn't been in a film since.
Nothing.
Good Lord.
Not even a commercial or anything's tempted him out. People have tried to get him out of retirement, but no.
Well, I mean, that's it. The more you, Daniel Day-Lewis, for example, 3-time Best Actor winner, has retired previously. Has apparently retired now to go live in Ireland and make shoes or whatever.
Yeah.
But when
share sheep this time, or
when you're a 50-year-old Daniel Day-Lewis and you've won all those awards and you're guaranteed this film is going to be better because he's in it. That just means somebody's going to try and offer you 30 million to be in a film, and that must be difficult to turn down.
I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis he looks like a very nice man, but he's definitely batshit crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, to do a film every 5 years and spend that 5 years learning an accent, learning a trade, working this, reading all the books you can, he's committed.
Yeah. So the reason I like this film is, so they hired director Gareth Edwards, right? So his 2 previous films before this were Godzilla 2014, which is a good film, and Monsters.
Sort of homemade laptop.
And have you seen Monsters?
I haven't.
You haven't? I have. It's a really good film.
Okay, yeah.
And I think what they saw in Gareth Edwards when they chose him was he does scale really well. He makes things look epic.
Yeah. And
this one thing about this film is it brings back the epicness of Star Wars. It really, they use light and dark in this film so well. It's so well. The cinematography in it's amazing. There's just a bit at the beginning when Krennic's ship's coming towards the planet that Galen Erso and Jin and Leia are on, and the way that it's shot, it looks like something moving away from the camera, but it turns out it's a tracking shot of a ship moving below some rings around a planet in shadow.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that looks amazing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, a feature that we sort of chose to do with the Princess Bride episode, but I don't think we've done with any of the others so far, is to summarise a film in one word. And if I had to do that for Empire Strikes Back, the word would be hokey. And that wouldn't apply to Rogue One, because you're right, the cinematography is different. It's got that grittiness, but it is a sort of epic realisticness, realism that the Empire didn't really have in that way. Did you go to see Rogue One at the cinema?
I did. So I think this is the first film we've discussed that I've actually seen, that any of us have seen. Did you see Get Out in the cinema?
No.
So I went to see this in the cinema, and it was and it was great in the cinema. It was just like the end battle scene where they kind of, when they come together, and there's the bit where the ship goes to take off and it hits into the Star Destroyer, and the music all changes and goes into like a minor key, and it kind of goes over the top of this sound. It becomes the major player in that scene. It's just
well, Star Wars is
gorgeous.
Nothing but bombastic and orchestral and big set pieces and so on that.
So here's a fun fact for you.
Go on.
I'm going to actually. We'll do a fun fact, because I don't really have too many facts.
They'll come out in the conversation, I'm sure.
So the bit where you see the dish for the Death Star being put in, and there's shadow again on that, and there's a Death Star Destroyer comes out of the shadow, but it's revealed slowly.
Very slowly. Yeah.
It's a beautiful shot. So that is a CGI rendering of a model of a Star Destroyer, and that's why it has that real authentic quality to the look of those things. Which, if you go and watch The Force Awakens and all those films, they don't do that.
Yeah,
and they should, because it feels like you can touch it.
Well, the biggest flaw from bits I've seen of the prequels is the reliance on CG for every aspect, the backgrounds, everything, some characters, and it's 2001 or whatever, it's 999 CG, so it really ages. And when you have a whole backdrop that's like that, I've mentioned Red Dwarf a couple of times on this pod before. Red Dwarf is best when it's just quite a cheap BBC kitchen that they've turned grey.
Yeah.
When they get to the later series, there's a Back to Earth special, the whole set is CG.
Yeah.
And I just find myself not caring about anything that happens, because I go, that's a set, where actually when it's just like a everyday working environment, it just realism, it's got realism to it.
Another reason why I like this film is because it's very British.
It is very British,
It is very
cast
British.
And crew,
But not just because of that, it's it's a British war film from the 60s, 70s and 50s, and it's The Great Escape, it's Dam Busters, it's Where Eagles Dare, that American.
So it's a small group of rebel types who are setting out to beat a bigger, I think Cassian.
Cassian Andor, yeah.
He makes a statement something like "make 10 men feel like 100" or something like that.
Is it him or Jin who says that? I think
somebody says that.
Yeah.
That idea of.
I think it might be Cassian. You might be right. Yeah, it's stuff like that. That's just makes it amazing because it's like we know we're against the odds, but we'll. Plucky attitude. Yeah,
and it's rousing speeches.
Yeah. Great set piece battles, real stakes. Like one thing I felt when I was in the cinema, and stormtroopers still can't hit shit, but you actually felt like these soldiers were a threat. Like they weren't just cannon fodder. They turned out to be amazing cannon fodder. But when there's that battle on Scarif at the end, there's bits where that guy goes, "I'll go for it," and he just gets wiped out straight away. And
he wants to make that big stand before he even makes a step. Funny you should mention the Stormtrooper. I was going to bring this in later, but it seemed like a good time now, actually. There was a fantastic study done to find out how accurate and efficient are stormtroopers at killing people.
Right, okay.
Would you like to guess some of the stats? So they did an analysis of the films, looked at the number of shots fired by stormtroopers versus deaths on screen by stormtroopers.
Okay. Some people have too much time there.
Absolutely. What percentage of the time do you think stormtroopers hit their target over the course of the Star Wars films?
Are they counting clone troopers as?
We count only Imperial stormtroopers on the dark side, under the command of Darth Vader, Moff Tarkin, Emperor Palpatine, or Kylo Ren. They don't include clone troopers.
So they don't
because they're under the command of Yoda and Obi-Wan.
So they don't include the clone troopers, right then.
But they do include separate types of stormtrooper. They do include the ones from this, so like I can't remember what they're called. There are various types of stormtrooper that they've just counted as stormtroopers.
Right, okay.
So an overall amalgam percentage, what percentage of the time do stormtroopers hit their target?
11.
4.16% of the time.
I thought it was going to be a bit higher than that because I think they're terrible, but they're terrible, but at the same time you do see a lot of people. Some
people do die.
Yeah.
So it varies from film. New Hope, 2.47%.
Obviously.
Because it's just lots of hallways and they're not hitting the three people who are there.
I do love that.
Empire, 0.96% of the time. Basically 1% of the time. Return of the Jedi, 9%.
Speaking of Empire, there's a great one where the actor, so they're in Cloud City and Han Solo turns back and shoots at the I think it's Princess Leia, and she's shooting back at a guy. There's like these 3 stormtroopers and one of them jumps and the stunt guy jumps up and on his face, on his hands and knees. When he gets shot he goes and jumps down.
Which reminds me of the shot in the...
Do you know the one I'm on about?
No, I can't picture it.
Yeah, it's near the end of the film when they're trying to rescue Han before he gets shipped off by the bounty hunter.
I can't picture it at all. There is a shot in Rogue One where Jin shoots the leg, just like a no-look shot at the leg. I thought that was an interesting choice.
There's like 4 no-look shots in this film.
So
what did you say, 9% then for Jedi?
Return of the Jedi, 9%. So the big 3 original, 4.17%.
Wow.
Rogue One, you have 5%.
And 5% in Rogue One?
There's the Death Shooters. I think they're in black.
Yeah.
They've got 25%.
Yeah, because they kill that guy we were just on about. Who goes, I'll go for it.
Force Awakens, 3.2% or 3.3%. It's just all comes together at about 4% of the time. They're accurate. Yeah, just a wonderful study.
I mean, them and James Bond henchmen need to go to a better school.
On the subject of their disposability, are they human in a bear?
The suggestion is they are.
Right.
You only ever see one stormtrooper take his helmet.
Is that John Boyega?
No, it's Daniel Boyega. It's lesser known, isn't it? No, that is literally it. That's the only one you ever see.
Because at the start, very very early in this film, where it's Cassian and Tivik, and there's a couple of stormtroopers that Cassian shoots. They're just talking to them like humans. They're not like androids.
Cassian and who? Sorry,
Tivik. Who's the guy he shoots?
Oh, is that guy called Tivik?
Oh yeah.
Oh, right.
This is the benefit of watching things with subtitles because it gives the characters names, even if they're never spoken.
I just called him
Loser.
Stumpy.
Yeah.
Well, no, Armley.
Do we understand why did he? What's wrong with his arm? How do we know that? That's just you're right. This is the problem with coming at it cold. Is I don't know what's relevant and what's not. What's been explained and what hasn't.
Oh, you think he might have been a character in another?
I thought
Star
maybe
Wars?
It was explained. It's
No, he's literally. He just goes, "Oh, I can't climb because I'm there.
I better bloody shoot you."
Yeah, and Cassian's like cold-blooded.
Do you feel like this film is has more grey area than the others?
Yeah, there's like. This is 50 Shades of Grey.
Relative to the old zebra of the Empire.
Yeah, definitely. So, here's a question. What do you think the storyline of Rogue One is?
What do I think the storyline? Well, the storyline is somebody has made a purposeful fault in the Death Star, and the storyline is the rebels finding out about that and then transmitting that message to other rebels.
Yep, sounds about right.
To set up a new hope.
Yeah, that's literally it.
Good.
So
I thought it was a test then.
No, that's one way of describing it.
Yeah,
that's very succinctly well done.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
All right. Yeah, I'd have been here and going. Yes, so that is the storyline. It's their rebels, and that comes out of. So there's a guy called Tony Knoll, right? You might have done this when you've had a look yourself. So Tony Knoll worked for ILM or Lucasfilm, which is the company that George Lucas set up in the 70s when he made Star Wars. Tony Knoll came in, worked there, and he's obviously a big Star Wars fan, and he saw in basically, so the idea for this film came from the opening crawl to Star Wars, and there's a little sentence in that which just reads, "Rebel spy managed to steal the secret plans for the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star." So Tony Knoll went to Kathleen Kennedy, who was then the new head of Lucasfilm after George retired, and pitched the film, and that's how the film got made.
So it's that one line from the...
Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely been one of the criticisms I've seen when I've looked at, say, Cinema Sins for this, which is how I get all my opinions, is that, is it about just, retcon? That's been kind of a buzzword that this pod's used a few times. Is the film set up to be a retcon, or is it more than that?
There's no real retconning in it at all, because they never explained how the rebels got it in Star Wars. It's just in that opening crawl. They've won a battle, they've got the plans, and now they need to stop it. And that's the premise to the film for Star Wars.
So they've not actually altered it, they've just embellished and elaborated on that.
They've just literally shown you what it is.
So what we do in this pod is the host who's seen the film explains why they like it, but then what's quite important as part of their recommendation is, well, why would you recommend it to me? What do you think I would like about it?
Yeah.
Perhaps that I didn't like about Empire that's better here, or just generally what do you think I'd like about this film?
So the reason I think you might like this film is because you didn't like certain aspects of Empire because you felt it was a bit childish. I thought that's the takeaway I got from it, is that you thought it was a bit childish. You didn't like the characterization of the characters, especially Luke Skywalker. You really didn't like Luke Skywalker, did you?
Mangy, whingy child, I think. So there's an improvement here. I mean, would Jin be the equivalent?
Well, obviously I know that you like... And so what I was trying to impress on you is that despite the flaws in Empire, that the Star Wars universe is one that you want to spend time with, because it's got this amazing array of characters who do heroic things against all the odds, and it's got these sweeping vistas and these amazing, but it's got that lived-in look. So I thought you might like this because A, it's got Felicity Jones in. I was kind of hoping I could get you with that. B, it's a more grittier film, and C, I was hoping that you'd get invested in that world by seeing it from a more grown-up point of view. I
suppose some of the flaws of Empire was it was of its time in the pacing issue that we talked about, that they've got objectively quicker over time, and as you say, the childishness of it. And whereas, like you say, Rogue One is not necessarily written and made for 8-year-olds. So much. Yeah,
this one was aimed at those adults who had seen Star Wars and knew about it. Now, I do remember saying at the end of last week's episode that you didn't really need to have seen all of the Star Wars films to understand some of the scenes in this. Upon watching Rogue One, I realised there is one character who does not make any sense in this when he's introduced, and it's just all you get is a little musical cue. This guy steps out of the shadows, and then they don't say he is, and because unless you'd seen...
Is it the guy in the diner?
No.
There is that, isn't there? Is that the guy?
Yes, yeah, that's from Star Wars. Yeah, they run. Yeah, that's the other one. There was two actually.
Who's the other one?
So you know
let me see if I can guess. So these are the people that I know that we see in Empire. So we see.
He's not in Empire. He's in Attack of the Clones, and I think.
Oh, bollocks then.
He's in Return of the Sith, but he's somebody important.
Right.
Father.
Oh, Leia's father.
Yeah.
Yeah, I trusted with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when he stepped out of the shadows,
immediately all I thought was, that's Amy Santiago's dad from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, or he's the guy it's Jimmy Smits. That's what he is, just Jimmy Smits, yeah. So I was kind of like, when I watched it, I was like, there's no context to why this guy steps out and the music rises, because he does nothing in that scene.
Right.
So was that confusing?
Yes, it was, and then I think it was in Cinema Sins that I saw. He's like, so aren't Leia and Luke siblings? Are they half siblings?
They're siblings. They're twins.
So he the sort of adoptive.
He's of Leia.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he gets.
How are you supposed to know that? Is it the character's name? Is it
the
actor?
You know that because you see him in Revenge of the Sith.
Right, only like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And you know that his name is Bail Organa.
Right,
and
I see.
He's not in it too much, but he's in it. In Revenge of the Sith. There's a scene at the end where he literally texts Leia to his wife, and they're sat on Alderaan, and it's actually a really nice scene.
Right, okay, and it's the same actor, right?
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I knew that, what's her name, Mon Mothman was talking about Obi-Wan. But then obviously to get to Obi-Wan,
many Bothans died to have this information. Is what she says in Return of the Jedi.
What is the moth thing? Is that a rank?
That's just her name. Mon Mothma's her name. I mean,
but the Grand Moff Tarkin is not related.
It's a title, so Grand Moff. You're asking me questions that aren't relevant here. I'm not going to lie to you.
I was just like moth and moth. I don't.
Yeah.
And one of them, they've got somebody who looks like the actress from the original. The other one, they've
yeah. So
CGI.
Let's get into names with this, because I've got some fun for you here with the names. I've not discussed this before, but are you aware of the random Star Wars name generators that you can get online?
I'm not.
So a few days ago I went online and decided to randomly generate names for me and you.
Is it based? It's just random. It's not based on information, is it?
It's based on the spelling of your name.
Okay.
So I got.
Is it anagram?
No,
right, okay.
It's not. So I got mine as Gil Zutochi. You are a foolish young hero from Osarian.
We see. So Gil Gil Zutochi Zutochi.
Yep, that's how you're pronouncing that. Would you like to know what your name was?
I'd love to.
So you are John Yoko Ollie.
What? So I am the love child of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Okay.
And an Ollie from a skateboard.
That's the only way.
You are a slave from Syrianan.
What's Syrianan?
Don't know. Just I've never heard of those planets. This is
one of the novels. Do you think?
Who cares?
Or is it?
I love Star Wars,
when there are a lot of planets. Is it that you've just missed those planets?
No, I've never heard of them. They're not in any of the three. They're not in any of the
10,
the 9 or 10 of any of the major theatrical release films.
Right.
If they are, then they're not mentioned by name. So I think the reasons maybe you wouldn't like this is, if I'm being honest, there is a bit of pacing issues at the beginning of the film. They jump to a lot of different planets quite quickly. The bit with Bodhi and Saw Gerrera and Bo Gullet, if you want to talk about Bo Gullet.
Talk about Bo Gullet.
That's... I don't know why that's in there. They try to make Saw Gerrera this like outland sort of like this extremist within the rebellion, but he doesn't do anything other than... he doesn't do anything on screen other than have a relationship with Jin in the cave. Now that bit's good in my opinion, where he's like, "Are you here to kill me, Jin?" Because he's so paranoid at that point, which I liked. But it's one of those things of where they say don't show him being this crazy terrorist. Also, his house where he lives is the most obvious place on the planet. Where's the big terrace? Well, we're a big desert. And there's clearly lots of activity going on there. Shall we check our tax records and see kind of what business? Well, there's nothing there, is there? The people who go there seem to be carrying weapons.
They're well into tax and Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose the Borg gullet maybe is a way of showing, not telling his paranoia.
Yeah, it doesn't link up in the rest of the movie because the pilot is fine, except for one scene. And if they said, they could have fixed it easily, because Borg gullet will see into your mind, and if he thinks you are lying, you will be left going with madness. If not, then you will be fine.
Or just even saying,
it's simple.
You lose your mind for a bit. Yeah. Just adding that qualifier of you lose it for a bit.
But that wasn't he could have said, oh, well, actually,
if you're lying, you'll lose your mind.
Or even it could be a threat from him saying, well, actually, no, it doesn't do this to you, but if you think that's happening in this moment, you might tell me the truth. Do you see what I'm saying?
I quite like the temporary mind loss.
Yeah, it would have been good if it just didn't make sense. It was a bit daft. It's a scene you could have had. You could have cut that scene, and you could have just been like, well, they tortured him. You'd mind to do the work there.
I think it works the idea that he's so paranoid, he's got and trapped and somehow trained this slimy Jabba the Hutt small thing.
Yeah, tentacle porn
thing. Are there any vestigial? Good word, that vestigial.
Good word.
Are there any problems that remain from Empire and the original trilogy that I brought up that you think still exist?
So, by you asking me that question, you think there is problems like that? I would imagine. It's hard, when you love something so much. It's hard to take a step away from it and notice what somebody who isn't into something would say is a critique. Because I would critique it for its plot holes to other films that are very minor that you don't notice when you watch it.
That wouldn't be a problem in it.
Yeah.
I think to be honest, the more you love something, the less it will. Because if you're actually quite insecure about your love of something or whatever, then you are actually more defensive about it because you do see those problems, but because you genuinely love it, maybe you don't as much.
I suppose this film I like it as well because it could have been awful because it was the first trilogy Skywalker related film, and it could have been absolute dog shit, quite frankly, and it could have ruined another piece of Star Wars for me.
But again, it's almost taking on some of that Marvel quality of let's take a risk, we'll take a director that's done very few things, that's worked maybe in a completely different genre, and we'll do something with it, we'll be risky with it. And I think that's what Marvel have done so well in getting people like James Gunn, let's say,
I've just
risk-free.
Yeah, I've just realised something. I was calling the guy who pitched it to Kathleen Kennedy this whole time Tony Noel. He's not called Tony Noel, so apology to Tony. He's called John Noel.
John Noel?
Yeah.
Of John Noel, I think that's Russell Brand's agent, John Noel.
That's entirely correct.
It seems unlikely.
Yeah, he's an American. I think he still works at Lucasfilm. So John Noel, just
John
so you
Noel.
know. And
Tony John. It's his fault for having a name like John.
Yeah,
John. What was he expecting?
Yeah, because there's a guy who came in, a guy called Tony Gilroy, who's also a director, producer and script.
There's 4,
writer.
I think, credited screenwriters. Is that reshoots and various other ones?
So another reason you might not like it is Grand Moff Tarkin. So let's start talking about Tarkin. Let's have some Tarkin talk.
What level should we talk about it on? As a film goer, just the effect? On an ethical level, perhaps?
Both.
What sort of contract do you have to sign whereby you die in 1994 and then 13 years later you're in a film? I mean, this is like the sort of thing that would happen when you sign your face
13, isn't it? Isn't it 18 years
Oh God!
later?
Oh my God! Time is bastard, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
that's 8. So
23 years.
So there's children who have grown up since he's been dead.
Since he died.
Yeah.
But when you sign up to FaceApp, they get your rights in perpetuity. I mean, is that what contracts are now like for Disney?
It must be.
Because I can understand Leia.
I mean,
spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
Should have said that right at the start.
Yeah.
I can understand Leia because I think she may have even still been alive when they were working on it. She died in 2016.
But I think hers is almost worse than Tarkin's because hers is really bad. Her face looks a little too wide. Genuinely, if you
I'm still talking ethically.
Oh, ethically. So she was alive when
exactly.
it was recorded, and she literally died about before it released. Yeah, apparently the estate of Peter Cushing's family.
For that? Yeah, fair enough. I'm sure they were into it, but
I mean, if you get people who are very enthusiastic, I can understand to a point why they did it. It was a bold choice.
It bloody was.
It failed ultimately.
It was an inconsistent choice as well, because sometimes you have actual footage from the original, sometimes you have other actors who look like, sometimes you have...
What I don't get is, if they were doing that with Tarkin, why didn't they do it with Mon Mothma?
Yeah.
Because between Rogue One and Return of the Jedi, there's only, 3, 4, 5 years in continuity, maybe a couple more perhaps. Maybe less. I'm not entirely sure of the actual years on that one. I'd have to check that out again. But you can tell it's a different person. So they're basically saying Peter Cushing was so recognisable as an actor compared to
CG.
compared to who played Grand Moff, played Mon Mothma, sorry. And so she wasn't good enough.
Be recast.
She had to be recast, and they used that actress in the in Revenge of the Sith, but they had an actor play Peter Cushing's character, Grand Moff Tarkin, in Revenge of the Sith right at the end, and it's a different actor who did the work on this.
Wow.
I thought they were going to bring him back. So did it take you out of that scene when you first got the reveal of Tarkin being CGI?
It did. I struggled to deal with his confrontation with Krennic, because I was just thinking, I was just assessing how good the job was.
Yeah.
And whether or not it was needed. I was thinking about the ethics of it. I was thinking about, who gets to decide this, and where does this take film? Oh, we're now at another scene. It definitely did a bit.
I remember when I saw it in the cinema, I definitely made a conscious effort to concentrate on the plot and what the dialogue he was saying, because I knew it was kind of coming.
Did you know beforehand?
Yeah, I knew beforehand that he'd been CGI'd in, and it was this big thing that they were doing. In terms of, so I was trying to concentrate on the plot. I didn't think they'd use them as much as they did, which, as you mentioned previously, it's a bold choice.
Yeah,
I think it fails. I think that doesn't help the case of this film. But if you take the CGI faces out of it, like Princess Leia and Tarkin, I'm going to say that you did like this film, but you didn't love it. So
okay. Is it time for...
It is time. Are we going to have a break for this?
Yeah, let's go to a break and we'll come back with my view.
So buy drugs, kids. Buy lots of drugs.
We were given a lot of money for that ad.
Yep. My dealer, I'm great.
It's Dodgy Dave. He lives down Rackenshaw Avenue.
It's a strange name that his parents gave him the name Dave. Dodgy, sorry.
Dodgy is a weird
yeah.
Nominative determinism.
Yeah.
So join us after the break for my view. Okay, my view, yes, is in twofold.
You said yes, very intrepid there.
The first time I watched it, I really didn't like it, and I was scribbling down all the things I didn't like about it. The second time I watched it,
so you did. So the first time you watched it, you didn't like it.
I didn't like it.
You didn't. What didn't you? So ultimately, the question. So you only because you had to watch it again for this that you ended up liking it.
If I was a critic and I saw it at a festival or I saw it at the cinema, I'd have given it a really bad score, and then when I watched it again, and I'd have printed a kind of I'm going to change my mind on this one and kind of like it. So the first time I watched it, I genuinely started playing Candy Crush for a bit. When it got to, especially when it got towards the combat bits, when it got to the bit where Garen Erso? No, Galen Erso. When he died, that I was on Candy Crush at that point for a long film after that. The main reason being that I thought, why do we need this film if not to just justify a really silly plot hole in A New Hope?
Yeah,
that's what it felt like. It felt like a marketing. It felt like a financial decision and a fan service decision to make a whole 2-hour film based on that. I was thinking, because it is inspired by war films.
Very much so.
And you can enjoy a war film knowing, let's say, a Second World War film, knowing full well that who wins. But you don't necessarily know that this band of
Wait,
people...
what? Who won?
You're quite far back in your history books, aren't you? I'll leave that spoiler for when you got that new book.
Can we just pause this while I go Google that?
So you can know who won the war, but you might not know who won that battle, or maybe it's a fictional battle. You might care about those people, and I felt like I didn't care enough about the people because I know how it ends. They're not going to not get the message to them. That I know how this goes. It's a problem with prequels always. Another problem, really.
Did you not enjoy how they got to that conclusion?
Only the second time round did I enjoy that really. I think in many ways it was a fan service film.
Is there anything wrong with a fan service film where it's a good film? So if the film that's ultimately made is good, because to me, I knew it was fan service. I was a fan. It served all of my fan servicey needs. I mean, if you didn't really enjoy it the first time around, I can't. So what made you enjoy it on repeat viewing?
Well, one of the major reasons why I didn't like it the first time was I thought, I don't know why these characters in this film. I didn't fully know what the theme was, and it just felt like another episode in this thing. And actually, it needed a theme. The second time around, the theme of hope really came out, and I started to see the ways in which each of the different characters was a variant of that theme. So there's a great book by John Truby called The Anatomy of Story that I'd really recommend anybody to read, especially if you're a writer. And one of the things he says about characters is that you need, in any story, you need a moral argument or a theme that you're exploring, and each character needs to be a variant on that theme. So let's say something like Shawshank Redemption, which we mentioned last time.
Yeah.
The theme there really is hope and institutionalization. And each character is a variant on that. So Andy Dufresne never gives up hope; he's losing it, and that's why there's such a struggle. Red's character is almost losing it, and Brooks has lost it, and so on and so on. I didn't really understand why these characters were in this film.
Yeah,
and it was only in the second viewing that I really started to see that. And so Jin's character kind of went from having no hope to gaining hope and having investment in the cause and so on. So that was one thing that really clicked for me.
I tell you one thing I do like about it is it allows characters to actually change their mind and not punish them for it, because Jin starts the film off with like, oh well, can you, when she's speaking to Saw Gerrera, he's like, oh, can you live under, an imperial flag? And she goes, oh, well, it's all right if you don't look up.
We've decided on our favourite line, and I think that might be my favourite line, and it's not the one I chose, but now you mention it, I did really like that.
Well, I'll spoil that later.
Well, that wasn't going to be the choice.
Yeah, well,
I've got my second favourite line.
Shall we go into favourite lines then?
We could do that shortly. I've got a few more things, but yeah, I thought that was really good. Yeah, she was. There's a great line in 1984, which I've today realised Hugh hasn't read, despite being a history buff.
Does it have to be a history? Look, you can't read and watch everything. I will read it eventually. Unless I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I'm 31. It's not
this
going
is a
anywhere.
risk I'm not willing to take, so I'll lend you that book. Winston Smith, our main character.
I've got people like you who can tell me all about it.
I'll praise it in a page. Winston Smith, the main character, he's starting to go against the big party, in this case the Empire, and he has an affair with a woman called Julia, and she's not somebody who's interested in really overthrowing the Empire in that sense, the Big Brother. She just wants to have her own rebellion, and the great line from his is, he says, "You're only a rebel from the waist down." She's very, very conformist otherwise.
Yeah.
And I quite like that.
That's a burn, isn't it?
Yeah, and she doesn't really understand it. But no, in this case, like I said, I started to see the themes, and that was a very good thing.
Yeah, well, hope is the main theme of this.
Yeah, and in a lot of the criticism I've seen, a lot of the reviews, they say hope, is a recurring.
But I suppose if you were in that situation, that would be it. Like, Annie, you speak to people who have been in real rebellions against actual empires throughout history, and like in the last, the 20th century, they speak of the hope for a better future without these people dominating over us. So yeah, that there is that, and
I think there is a line of rebellion is built on hope.
Yeah,
but yeah, and it does shine through on second viewing. It's quite possible I'm not very perceptive, so it might be my fault that I didn't get the first time. But also the other issue I had is not being a fan. Well, two big issues was the amount of fan service, which I think is an excellent thing if you are a fan. but is alienating or a bit kind of like, well, whatever, if you're not a fan. The other one was, for me, I needed to re-establish what the cause of the Empire was, or what their goal was. I don't know if you can tell me, what is the Empire? Why is it trying to do this stuff? Why should I care?
The Empire just wants to have... They're fascists, they're space fascists. And fascists just want to have control over people's lives and order over society. So they do horrific and unjustifiable things to have... there's a line in the film right at the beginning when Galen and Krennic are talking, and Krennic says, we were this close to having peace. And
you're confusing...
and Galen says, you're confusing peace with terror.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the motivation for the Empire.
I think that might have been an issue I had with it, because in modern cinema now, in the last 5-10 years, we're starting to get really complex villains. And there are more complex individual villains, but the actual cause and so on, the Empire, is a bit black and white. It's a bit George Lucas.
Yeah.
And I think, really, especially my first viewing, I didn't really care for it.
I suppose in defence of Lucas is, obviously, he grew up as a child of somebody whose nation and the world was torn apart by these very dark empires whose idea of, they were fascists. Their idea of an ordered society was to root out the weak and promote the strong. And
maybe that would have been... Is that part of the Empire? It's not just to rule everything? Is it to make things better, or is it just for power? Because if we're using a sort of Nazi...
Well, they are a direct result of it. It's not allegory, they are. There's no Star Wars without Marvel. There isn't.
But that's it. But a Nazi wouldn't think we're doing this for power. They think they were doing this for the betterment of humankind.
Yeah,
to make humankind better.
That's what. So at the top of it, they all care about power. It's about power and the power over the galaxy.
Right.
In this case, obviously they use political tricks to make it out that the galaxy's better for people by having this powerful entity.
As long as you're part of it.
Yeah, and as long as you conform to it.
Because I can see somebody like Krennic's motivation, because he's thinking, well, I can get quite high up in this thing and be very powerful and have a great life myself.
Here's a great question for you. So I would frame this story as what if Robert Oppenheimer was coerced to working for the Nazis rather than the Americans?
Yeah.
What would somebody like that have done in order to stop the Nazis who we might fundamentally not have agreed with?
Yeah, and I mean, on a...
And that's what Galen Erso is, isn't he?
I suppose he is. On a more individual level, I've read this brilliant book called Auschwitz, The Doctor's Eyewitness Account. It's by Miklos Naishli, and it's about a Jewish Hungarian doctor who was in Auschwitz, and he was found to be a doctor, so he was recruited by the likes of Mengele to carry out experiments and so on. So they know full well that he doesn't want to do this, and given a chance and a gun, he would kill them all.
Yeah.
But they're kind of hiring him to do this thing. And it's quite tricky. You get this sense that there's a background between Krennic and Galen.
Yeah.
And that maybe they did agree at one point.
Yeah, there's an allusion to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or that at some point, it's that whole problem that scientists had at the end of the 19th and in the 20th century is, oh, well, I've got a thing that I can do, but should I do it? It's that moral and ethical kind of dilemma that lots of them struggle with. Like Einstein famously didn't want anything to do with the Manhattan Project. They probably would have asked him and got him involved if he was wanting to do it. But Oppenheimer did do something.
He went for it. There was a brilliant scientist called Richard Feynman.
Yeah, Feynman's the same.
And he wrote brilliantly about it in his sort of autobiography. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, which I'd really recommend to anybody. And they felt the accomplishment of a scientific project, but actually the humanitarian level of it only really hit them later, which is an odd concept. Yeah, so I thought, as far as retcon, that word again, as far as retconning why there was a fault with the Death Star, I thought they did a good job of that.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest problem I had, was why am I watching this? And I also tied in with, I've seen all this before. I've seen Matrix Revolutions. I've seen Daredevil, so I can see the blind man being quite good with a stick. Yeah. I've seen that, which kind of irked me a bit because I thought he's a good character and it's quite cool, but so he's blind, but he can sort of see a bit because of the Force and because of his belief. but he's still at a distinct disadvantage to somebody who can see.
Yeah, there is a very funny bit where when he gets to the console, he goes and puts his hands like
he's been dodging.
Yeah, but he can dodge bullets or laser bolts, and he can, beat people up in an instant.
Yeah,
I think with that you've just got to go. It's the Force.
Yeah, it's the Force, and I did quite like that as a mantra. I am the Force, and the Force is with me.
Yeah, I'm the Force.
I'm one with the Force.
I'm one with. Yeah, that's it. I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me. I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me. And he keeps repeating that. And there's a great bit where they're in the cell, and they're basically going, "Why is he doing that?" And he says, "Oh," and Bismarck.
He's praying.
Yeah.
He's worried. He's annoyed. He's worried because he believes it.
Yeah, he's praying for the door to open.
On that, I mean, the door controls.
Just don't. Look.
It really took me out at the moment. I thought, oh, fuck yeah. There was a sequel to... Do you remember Short Circuit, Johnny Five, I'm Alive?
I have seen it when I was a child. I think there was
a sequel to it, and I think he starts to bleed oil. He's sort of been shot or something.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the guy goes to stitch up the wound, and he rips his sleeve off his shirt to do so. But it's clearly made so that the sleeve comes off very easily, and he just goes and he just pulls it very slightly and it comes off, and it just took me completely out of the film. And I thought,
I think you're supposed to think that Cassian Andor's character's this amazing, like he's choosing to be in that cell at that moment rather than.
Are you?
No. it's just that, what is it, plot convenience.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to escape now. Therefore.
And shortly after that, we need to talk about, this is a recurring theme in this film. People do things for the benefit of the plot and then they die. They press a button and they die. Saw Gerrera, I still don't quite understand how they can justify, I'm done running. You don't have to die right now. We are leaving right now. No, I'm done running. I've served my convenience this plot. I've clearly got asthma. Just leave me.
Did you like the little Darth Vader illusion breathing apparatus?
Yeah, I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, that was like, oh well, what is this guy? But he's a good guy because he rescues.
Seen him, Forrest Whitaker.
We've
seen him.
Yeah. So what was your favourite scene? Because you said you did like some of this film.
I did like it. I grew to like it a lot when I stopped playing Candy Crush. When I watched it the second time, and I properly focused. I did. So
is this more to do with you on the first viewing and your lack of ability to concentrate?
It didn't grab me, and I was annoyed by it. And then everything after just sounded like bangy, shooty, blah 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 stuff that I'd always seen. So I liked it more the second time around. I do like, in terms of a favourite scene. I do have it. Oh, my favourite scene is the one that's probably been spoken about the most.
Yeah,
Vader.
Yeah,
I loved it. I don't care about how crap it makes him look in A New Hope when he's fighting with Obi-Wan. When it's like, it's just really bad.
Just old man and a really tall man kind of trying to fence badly.
It's what's really great about cinema when you watch a film like Logan. Let's say, big spoiler alert. He has a fight at the end.
Are we spoiling other films?
No, there's a fight at the end.
Yes,
and he's really good in the fight. He's got a serum.
That would ward off.
Let's say Dark Knight Rises. He's not been Batman for about 55 minutes of the film, and then he is Batman, and you go, oh yes, he's earned it. He's really earned this move. So it's like that with Vader, because he's just this ominous presence. And even though I didn't like Empire Strikes Back, I did like Darth Vader, and I like the music of Darth Vader, and I like that character a lot. And it just was so badass and so cool to see him. Because he's so scary to everybody, and you think, well, obviously he can choke you with his mind, but it's weird that he's so feared in the galaxy, and then you see something like that and you go, oh, that's actually fantastic.
Well, this will come as no shock. That's my favourite scene as well.
Oh, is it really? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is fan service when fan service works. When it's earned. Yeah, because it's... One criticism people have of the original trilogy is that there's this like malevolent character, but he never actually does any other than capture Han Solo. He never really does anything super malevolent himself, because Luke escapes. Luke defeats him in Jedi. Yeah. That's it. He never physically does. He might be the guy ordering things, and he might kill a few of his own cronies. Which
you need a show of power in the way that they relatively early in the film. Well, maybe halfway through the film, I don't know, shot the Death Star for the first time. A real show of power to go, look, we can do this. So it comes right at the end of the film, so it kind of makes sense for it to sort of show some power at the start. I just like the idea that the bad guys should be actually scary, because you should be able to see what they do wrong.
Yeah.
What they do. Yeah. You're scared of it.
Yeah, and you are genuinely terrified of Darth Vader in that moment.
Yeah.
And it's that hot, like the lighting in it. I mean, apparently that shot was the director Gareth Edwards. They was filmed about 3 months before the film came out.
Right.
They did it over 3 days, yeah. And it's like about a minute and a half or something, and it's amazing.
Because it has been derided as being completely against character and blah blah blah.
But it totally isn't against character. One of the rules they had when they were making that is we will not show Vader doing anything that he never did in any of the original trilogy films.
But again, if you go back to the lightsaber fight he had with Obi-Wan in A New Hope,
yeah, but that it does look bad
because he is against a powerful Jedi. So
that's the idea. Yeah. But a Jedi he would have easily beaten when he was younger, but he only lost because. Plot reasons. Yeah, I hate that.
It's got to distract him enough to let him run away with
He goes, "It's over, Anakin, I have the high ground," and that didn't make a difference when you were fighting Darth Maul. It really angers me because it's so easy to write it well. Like, they could have made it. They could have done 1,000 different things.
I think this is my biggest problem with Star Wars is that there are a lot of bad decisions and there's a lot of hokey choices and a lot of bad choices and a lot of inconsistencies, which again I've mentioned Marvel a couple of times. That doesn't have, but that is over the span of 11 years rather than 40 odd, 40 years. So there are those things that I just think, how did this get through several layers of editing and drafts?
Yeah.
But no, I think I'm not converted to Star Wars, but I do think that this was
So if I asked you to come see the next Star Wars film,
I'd stop doing the podcast because there might come a time in an idle Sunday afternoon where I do find myself watching another Star Wars film.
Yeah,
I'm more drawn to that idea now. I'm not likely to ever watch Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
but I am a touch more likely to watch Force Awakens now. But I'd rather watch something else in our next.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm glad that we at least wanted to give you another crack of the whip to see what people liked. And I thought, even though I know you're not a massive, war film fan.
Well, I don't know. I do like some more films. I like Saving Private Ryan and
Fair
a few
enough.
others. Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of allusions to that in this film. That was probably almost more of an influence in the second.
Yeah, especially on
last
the
act of the
beach.
film.
Yeah, and all that.
Did you like the dog fights in space? That bit was brilliant, wasn't it?
It's not for me. I think.
Really,
I think again, it's another hangover of not really caring, not really being into Star Wars when I was younger, and that would have been a thing.
Fair enough. For me, those scenes, that final act of the film is brilliant. There is a bit too much of, we've got to get a thing to a thing and then to another thing.
That thing's not working. Let's get another thing.
Yeah,
another thing. But I think it worked. I mean, one problem I had was that I wrote down in the first viewing was that it wasn't clear. It wasn't like each character was fulfilling an arc when they sacrificed themselves. They were just sacrificing themselves.
Yeah. Although the only characters that I think the only character that sacrifices himself, in my opinion, really is Baze Malbus. So without a reason, because he just gets angry that his friend's been murdered. Where, yes, they could have kept Bodhi alive, but he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could argue. Same with
how does Cat die?
He literally gets a grenade thrown into the ship, and he's just, there's nothing he can do about it.
But all he's done is connected a wire to a thing, and then he dies. K2 presses a button, and then he dies. I mean, it's not like he's not redeemed himself, except he's been nice to Jyn.
Yeah. But he doesn't need to redeem himself, does he?
Or there's no arc or something. In fact, K2 actually was very good. Alan Tudyk did an excellent job, and and I think every film like this that's quite gritty does still need that light touch, and it's quite nice when that comes from one particular character.
Would you like to know my favourite lines then, since we did?
Let's do favourite lines and favourite scenes.
Yeah, so you obviously had your favourite line, which was, as you mentioned before, it doesn't bother you if you don't look up or something.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
My second choice was when K2 said, the odds of her using it to shoot you It's high.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very high.
That was a bit fan servicey, I thought.
Yeah, it was.
It's very high.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
What was your favourite line?
Well, I've got quite a selection of favourite lines in this film.
Okay.
So I'm going to do them in order from my...
He did spend about 30 minutes transcribing them, so we could be in for something here.
So there's the bit... so Bodhi says, this shuttle should be equipped with an access code that allows us through, and K2SO just says, assuming the Empire has logged it as overdue. Jin then says, and if they haven't, Bodhi says, then they shut the gate and we are all annihilated in the cold dark vacuum of space.
And K2 says,
not me I can survive in space. that's real. That humour is brilliant. Like, why? Yeah, he's like almost... He's so funny in that film.
He's like the first act of the invention of lying, because the people in that universe can't lie, and they also say everything that comes to mind, and that's kind of what they've given K2 there.
Yeah, he is pretty much always says what he's thinking. Mm-hmm. We mentioned the other one earlier, Galen Erso, you're confusing peace with terror.
Yeah, I think
that's a great line.
Krennic almost concedes that point. I don't think he actually says anything.
He does. No, he says, well, we have to start somewhere. It's not a great line, is it?
I feel like he's not conceding it, but he's not given a convincing argument against it.
No, he's not.
So yeah, our favourite scene is both.
Well, I was saying I've got some more. I'm still going through my favourite quotes. So
good lord!
Yeah, there's a few more. So I'll say we will take the next. So the speech Jin gives in the shuttle, where she's saying we'll take the next chance, and then the next chance, and then until all our chances are spent. But the best line comes from Jin Erso when she's in the council meeting, and she just goes. The council member goes, "You are asking us to invade an imperial installation based on nothing but hope." And Jin just snaps back and goes, "Our rebellion is not built on hope."
Yeah.
And as much as you could, again, hope is the central theme, but that she's correct, isn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do that like debate that they're having in the building. Each character says something, and nobody talks over anybody.
Yeah.
What about this? What about that? What about that? It's 6 people, and then somebody just in the crowd. Even the subtitle says something like "random rebel." What is she proposing?
Yeah, I remember that.
Just let the girl speak. And it was like something from The Simpsons,
What are they?
Just let the girl speak.
The two old Muppets in the Muppets.
Yeah, exactly. Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah.
But they're just from random, and it's kind of like we want all these views to be given. But we're not going to do it in a realistic way. We're just going to have different people saying each of these different views, and it just blew my mind.
Did you not like that bit then?
No, it was ridiculous. I mean, it was efficient.
It's
which is damning with fair praise.
It is a little bit. I've got a couple of facts this week, but no good facts.
Give it some.
So some of the lenses they used on this film are 40 years old.
From the original?
Probably not, no.
Oh, what's the point?
No, but to establish for some of the cinematography, they used some of the they used old lenses to get those really wide shots, but they're notoriously hard to focus on. Right. So it gives it that real cinematic vista quality that I mentioned earlier.
Cool. So it's literally about 40 years old, which is when the first one was being shot.
Yeah, so whether they're from the original, they suggested they weren't. When I read it. What's the other facts that I have? Let's have a look here. I was going to say Peter Cushing was dead 18 years when this was made, but we mentioned that.
It's more than that, though, wasn't it? It was 20 odd years.
No,
it was 94.
Yeah, so if he died in 94, this came out in 2016.
So yeah, more than 20 years.
Yeah, sorry, I thought 18.
We both made that same mistake, isn't that right?
Yeah, so yeah, 22 years he was dead. Yeah, so they'd have a job and have finished uni as well.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Top nothing. What other facts do I have? Right, so we need to get into this as well. So I mentioned Tony Gilroy before, and you were on about the writers. This project had some difficulties. The first cut of it, they didn't really like it, the studio, and basically Tony Gilroy was hired to come in and reshoot a lot of it. There's estimates of up to 40%
of the budget. Of the film.
Of the film was reshot.
Good Lord.
That's too high a number for the time they had. And to Gareth's credit, he was like, yeah, the first cut wasn't as good as it should be. I would love to see the first cut of that film.
Intrigue.
One thing they did do on this film, which was really cool, was they did a thing called Indie Hour for the crew. So Gareth said, for an hour a day, you get to just do strikingly good shots, whatever you want. It doesn't matter the context, just make something that looks good. And the only one they ended up using was when Jin's in the pilot, like the guy, the people who guide planes and I don't know, the air traffic control person.
The semaphore, the people.
When she's dressed like that and she goes in the tunnel and it all lights up. That was the one shot they used. But
that was only used in the trailer, wasn't it?
No, it was used in the film. There is stuff, yes. So there was.
I've seen something about what was in the trailer and what was in the final film. There was a lot missing.
Yeah. So again, this is becoming a common trend. Sometimes there's things like Avengers: Infinity War had that shot where they were all running at the camera, and that never happened.
Yeah.
Marvel are a bit different, as in they'll put people in, take things out
on purpose.
To stop spoilers. But in this, what happened was they got a load of footage, and the marketing department just took a load of shots that didn't make it into the final cut of the film. And there's a few scenes where there's one scene where when she gets taken to Yavin 4 by the rebels, and there's a line where she goes, he reads out like all the things that she's done.
And what she says, I'm a rebel, I'm rebelling.
I rebel, and I think that should have made the final cut, because in that scene she's a bit morose and doesn't really answer them. Apparently the way they filmed it was they would do it with different tones, so we'd right, do it this way, do it that way, and do it this way, and do it.
That's a bit Joss Whedon in 1997. That is like a sort of snarky 17-year-old American teenage girl.
Yeah, it is, but I think it's her going, well, you have no authority over me, so this is what I genuinely think. And I would have preferred to have kept that in. Apparently there's a bit where a TIE fighter flies up to the
when
platform.
She's on the antenna.
Trying to realign it. There was a bit where they're running through, apparently in the original script, so they had it that the plans to the Death Star were in one location, and the aerial to send it was the dish to send it was in a different location. So that's why if you ever watch some of the trailers or some extra footage, they're running through the beach towards the AT-STs or whatever they're called in this one.
AT-ATs is what.
Well, the AT-ATs, which are the classic ones, but these ones with the cargo with the hollow thing, there's like AT-AST or something.
Oh right.
Yeah.
ATASTs.
Yeah, essentially.
Interesting.
Yeah, ATAST yourself.
Because I'm tired.
Yeah, you can go ATAST yourself. Yeah.
I suppose that might be one of those things where they go, you know what? There's been enough jeopardy and peril up to this point. There's been enough do this and do that. Maybe it's enough to just be like, we're at the top of this fucking thing. Yeah. Let's just do it now, because there's a time element as well, isn't there?
Yeah. There's one of the reshoots that you can find online is where, so obviously K2SO, he dies in the control room for the vault, and there's footage where he basically dies on the beach outside a doorway, and he drops down and falls dead next to Cassian Andor. So you can see his body lying, Andor's body lying there. So it's clearly a better ending, because that bit when you see the flash of light and they're on the beach and you see his eyes, and it's like that really, I thought that was a great shot.
That was beautiful. Yeah, that was beautiful.
And there's you almost go, there's a relationship that could be building between those two, and it's like, they both die, and it's real.
Yeah.
As an audience, you're like, what could have been for those two people who had done these terrible things for the right reason?
I'm glad they didn't kiss and get together, because I wasn't sold on that as a side plot, because so often what happens in films is the two good-looking man and woman leads just end up kissing because they're the male and female leads. And I did like that as a death, because it's a very beautiful image.
The only thing I would have changed is I'd have had it Jin eyes light up and you see her in the fear in her eyes rather than Andor's, because she is the main character of this film.
She is. I wonder what it means. I mean, Cassian is somebody who gives everything for the rebellion, and this brings me nicely to one of the things that makes this better to me than the original trilogy is the slightly more grey that we talked about. Yeah. Because he kills Tivik right at the start, so that he doesn't tell the stormtroopers about this thing. And it also brings us nicely to critical reception.
It does. Come on then, hit us.
So, in Metacritic, previously we've used Rotten Tomatoes, but I think Metacritic have got a better algorithm, really. Rodrigo Perez said that it was a very good Star Wars...
Rodrigo Perez?
Reviewer. I don't know where
the reviews for. So it could just be some guy sat at his computer in his underwear.
I'm sure there's nobody else called Rodrigo Perez. They're not two common Spanish names. It calls it a very good Star Wars film, but it falls short of being a truly great one. But
I disagree.
They praised the morally grey texture compared to the black and white stripes of the previous ones. So when Cassian kills Tivik, I think that's a key area of that.
Well, it's right at the beginning of the film, isn't it? And it kind of sets up the tone of the film beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Cassian isn't this. He's not this. Again, he's not this white knight. He's complicated, and he even says that everything I do it for the alliance.
Yeah.
Perez goes on to say that as a criticism, fan service in Rogue One is at first minimal and tolerable, even clever, but the little Easter egg nods to A New Hope begin to add up to the point of irritation towards the end. I felt that as somebody who's not a fan. But if I liked it, I would have been well in for that. I would have really liked that. I
think as well, if you have only seen Star Wars maybe once or twice, and it's been a couple of years between viewings, and the only one I thought that you would genuinely notice is the one from when Jimmy Smits comes into it and Bail Organa comes in, because you had to have seen Revenge of the Sith to know who he is.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I've mentioned Marvel several times. As somebody who likes Marvel films, it would be very hypocritical of me to say, well, that's a bad thing to do, because you couldn't watch Infinity War. I think it's a good standalone film, but you would miss so much if you hadn't seen 21 other films before it.
Have you got another review there?
I've got several, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of 100% scores. Total Film gave it a 100% score, but there was also a 25% score.
Go on then.
San Francisco Gate. They said it was exhausted, demoralised, and no fun. And they said it's a war movie, but war movies are about toil, half-victories and moral compromise and self-doubt. But Star Wars is always just about good versus evil, and it wasn't complicated enough. And I think...
It wasn't complicated?
I think it was more... But it wasn't grey enough. There wasn't enough grey area.
There wasn't enough grey area.
And I see where they're coming from, but I probably side more with Rodrigo Perez to say that actually there were more grey textures.
Compared to, all the other Star Wars films, this looks like... this is like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction in terms of it.
I would have quite liked it if Ben Mendelsohn's Krennic character had more of a complex motivation. So just a little bit where he's a bit too. This is why
he's very 2D character.
Yeah, and everyone on the bad side is quite 2D.
Yeah,
I think everyone on the good side is a bit more complicated because they think what is worth it for the Rebel Alliance, what is worth it for the cause. Obviously, they sacrifice their lives, they sacrifice other people's lives, and really their morality. But the bad guys, I do agree with the idea that the bad guys are always just evil. And I do wish Krennic was a bit more complicated. I wish he had a better comeback than with Peace and Terror. I wish he had a better comeback than
you got to start somewhere.
Because I didn't believe him that he wanted peace.
Right. You think he's just a guy doing a job? I mean, a lot of people say he's driven by his ambition.
He's driven by his ambition. He's sycophantic towards Vader, and he wants recognition for the Death Star for making that happen. Yeah,
another scene they cut out actually is from the trailers where he says something like, "We don't know the power we're dealing with," and he's like kind of standing up to Vader, but he's kind of sent there as a scalded puppy in that scene on Mustafar, which I wouldn't. Personally, I like this scene at the end. I wouldn't have the bit where he goes to Vader. If I could make a change, I'd take out Bo Gullet. I would keep Grand Moff Tarkin because you can't not have this film without him. But I think,
would you recast?
I would have, definitely have somebody who looks strikingly like him. I wouldn't have the CGI, and I would have Vader at the end.
Would you have Guy Henry just play him with makeup on?
Yeah, I think the voice. I think one thing that's really good about this is the voice sounds just like.
That's true. Weirdly enough, I saw the face was completely CGI. It didn't occur to me in some ways that the voice wasn't his.
Yeah,
which is testament to how good that was.
And I think if you would put Cushing's voice inside the other actors.
Guy Henry, I think.
Guy Henry, yeah. If you put the voice of Tarkin inside Guy Henry's mouth, it would have it would have sounded very weird. Where I think they should have just recast it like they did with Mon Mothma. But everything else is really good.
Would you have kept Leia?
Yes, I would have.
She's only on screen for 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, and she
I think
says,
that's fine.
And she goes, "What is it?" And she goes, "Hope." And it ends, and it's very Star Warsian in that respect.
And I actually preferred them doing CGI for her rather than just use the back of her head in a familiar costume.
Yeah, they could have got away with it.
They could have. But
the CGI though I think it's worse on her. I think they could have got maybe Carrie Fisher's daughter, who's in. I think she's in Force Awakens, and she's in the Last Jedi, and they could have just CGI'd some of her mum's features onto her, perhaps
for that short amount of time.
Yeah, because they look enough like each other that you can tell it's her daughter, but they don't. But you don't need it to be this weird, crazy CGI thing of it. That creeped me out more than Tarkin.
So much of her face is covered. So much of her head is covered, and it's white, just completely white.
It's too brightly lit.
Yeah,
that's the problem with it.
That could be it.
It's far too brightly lit. So,
does this lead us nicely onto the quiz?
Well, do we need to do the would you recommend this, and then I can do
we do, and the rating.
Yes. So would you? So actually, how many chances out of 10 would you give this film?
Is that a K2 reference?
No, it's the reference to the bit where she's saying, "And we'll take the next chance and the next chance until we run out of chances."
That's good. I would give this a 6.
You give it a 6,
which for me is like a 20 out of 10 for a Star Wars film. I think 6.
Would you recommend it?
Not to everyone.
Not to everyone. So 2 all.
Yeah, I think.
Did you enjoy the film?
The second time round.
Okay, so
yeah.
So if it was on another litmus test I think with our films is if it was on a Sunday afternoon on TV, you were cooking your tea, you had nothing to do for 10-20 minutes, and it was on, would you watch it to the end, say halfway through?
No.
Right, so definitely not.
Well, I mean, that's a tricky one because it doesn't necessarily. Because, for example, Lars von Trier, I've never rewatched any of his films, but I've really, really thoroughly enjoyed each one.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily.
But that's a very different.
It is.
Very different prospect. If you're going to sit and. A lot of Lars von Trier film isn't going to be on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock when you're cooking your Sunday dinner.
And I'm never going to be cooking a Sunday dinner. That's not really my style. But
yeah.
No, I think.
Right, when your girlfriend's cooking your dinner for you.
The sadist. I'm glad I watched it. I'm definitely glad I watched it a second time. And that's. Can you
see why people like me, hello, like Star Wars? Does that give you an insight because it's such a rich universe that you can make a grown-up film?
It does more. It definitely does more than when I watched Empire.
Do you think? Well, I can see why he now would go see the films that are more for kids because it's that nostalgia. Because
it's piqued my interest to the extent that I want to know what's happened in the other films without investing the time to watch all the other films.
I tell you one thing they are doing is they're making a bounty hunter film, so another guy who's like Boba Fett essentially, a Mandalorian.
That is the absolute what I don't want.
But it's made by Jon Favreau.
Oh, good, that's good stuff.
Or it's produced by him at least, and it's meant to be a more grown-up Star Wars apparently.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I probably wouldn't watch it because I'd assume that I needed to know more.
Right.
But like I say, it's piqued my interest enough to sit down with you for an hour and you tell me everything that's happened in the other two. And so it's given me a better view of Star Wars. So I think on the whole, it's been a success.
Okay. Well, thank you for bending there.
My pleasure.
Right, so time for the quiz. Question 1.
Ooh.
Is for no money at all.
Still have my 3 lives though.
Yes.
My phone a friend.
That's one of them. So this one's a hard one. This is the hardest one of the lot.
God. Question 1. Can you put this question with 4 or 5?
No, put question 1. And there's only 1 mark available. Which planets do they go into in this movie that are mentioned on screen?
Jeddah.
In chronology. No, joking. That's 2. Yep, Jeddah.
Some at 4 begins with a Y, I think.
What's that called?
I don't know. I've written them down.
Yeah, if you've written them down.
So I've earned it, right? Okay,
yeah, this is an open book question.
The Ring of Catherine.
Actually, no, this isn't an open book. Put the close there. Yeah.
Trading outpost.
You've essentially Googled this and wrote it down.
Wabani.
Yep.
So all I remembered was Jeddah.
So all you remembered was Jeddah. So they were in order. That was shown on the screen. I don't think the first planet's actually mentioned. Is it on the screen?
Well, it could be. Is it Ring of Catherine trading?
No, that's the shot when he comes down.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think it was mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think it is. It just cuts.
It just lands.
It cuts to it, doesn't it? And then
so.
it cuts to the ship coming in.
They'll tell us.
Yeah. So Rings of Catherine, got Barney, Yavin 4, Jeddah.
I said 4 begins with a V or something.
You were 50% of the way there. Edu and Scarif.
I should have got Edu and Scarif.
Yeah, I mean, literally 3 of them are within like the first 5 minutes.
It was too much. I thought I'm going to stop writing these down.
I remember sitting in the cinema and going, "Oh, I'll try to remember that," and literally they're on the Barney for
it's not going to happen.
a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or 2 minutes. I think
she's just immediately picked it from there, isn't she?
Yeah, that's the hardest question. See if you can remember this. Who pitched the film to Kathleen Kennedy?
John Knowles.
Yep, not Tony.
Not Tony Knowles. Tony Gilroy wrote part of it and did the reshoots.
Yeah. Well, so you've got 1 mark.
Again, it just helps me because that's who represented Russell Brand.
What order of monks do Chirrut Imwe and Bears Malbus belong to?
Jeebus Christ.
They do mention it in the film.
You're right. I'm struggling.
Financially, morally, spiritually?
In every possible sense.
Okay.
Can you give me the first letter?
G. I'm not going through all of them, spelling it out for you.
No, go on.
So they were the Guardians of the Wills.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have got that, but I recognise it. Yeah, fair enough.
That's a proper Star Warsian question.
It really is.
Yeah, because the Wills...
Sorry, guys. I know you knew it.
For those who don't know it, get good.
Why are you listening to this if you're not a nerd?
Nerd! Okay, question 4. What is the composer's name for this film?
Without so it wasn't John Williams. It was John Williams.
No.
So I remember seeing in a review. It was almost John Williams, but not as good. I can't remember.
So the guy who did the music.
He was frantically looking at his phone.
No, because I didn't write it down so you could see it. And I don't want to miss because his name's Italian. and I don't want to mispronounce it.
Yeah, I remember it not being a white British name, so I immediately scrubbed it from my memory.
Well, that says more about you than it does anyone else.
That's arguable.
It is Michael Giacchino, and he's a famous film composer.
I'm glad you know that.
He's done.
Is it IMDb?
Yeah. No, I know who he is. I just didn't want to make sure I pronounced it correctly because I'm bad at pronouncing foreign names. I don't want to embarrass myself. So he did the work for Star Trek, War for the Planet of the Apes, Ratatouille, Inside Out, Avengers.
Sorry, it's in Star Wars, Star Trek, War for the Planet, Ratatouille. It was just quite incongruous.
Yeah, this is off.
So he's accomplished.
Yeah.
Good.
What did you think of the soundscape in this film?
It was good. Yeah, it wasn't as iconic, but I liked it.
No,
and it had a couple of notes and motifs. And I don't know what I'm talking about, but it had some similarity with the original.
Yeah, I think there was very much an impression that they weren't going to use all the cues and notes from the original Star Wars.
It wasn't as constantly discordant as Empire.
Yeah. Okay, so question 5.
5, good lord.
What does Donnie Yen say to the stormtrooper when he is holding onto him and fighting with him?
Oh, what?
What funny line does he say as he's fighting with them?
Donnie Yen's Chirrut.
Yeah.
When he's fighting the stormtrooper. Yeah. Oh, I've got when they're putting a sack on his head.
No, that's another good one because he's not a stormtrooper. Okay, he does something to his foot, and he says something. Can you remember the line he says? He stabs his cane onto his foot or his stick.
Oh yeah, of course. No, I can't remember what he said.
He said, "Is that your foot?" It's a really funny line. But the bit, and the other one is good, where he goes, "Are you kidding me? I'm blind."
Yeah.
Donnie Yen's great.
I did like it. I did like him in this. Yeah, that's why I was very enjoyable.
So that was Rogue One.
Highly successful quiz there. Yeah, Rogue One. I was eventually glad that I saw it.
Yeah.
And thanks for introducing me to Planet Society there.
Yeah.
I was heretofore not a part of. What are we going to watch next week?
So, next week we are going to watch Circle.
Circle, not The Circle with Tom Hanks and Emma Watson. Circle, low budget, thriller, high concept, 85 minutes. I've just told you some stuff. What do you know about it already?
Just the stuff you've literally just said there. Yeah. I have no idea. I'd never heard of it. I don't know who's in it. I don't know even what country it was produced in.
Perfect.
I mean, yeah, is it just 85 minutes of just a circle on the screen? And
it's pretty experimental. Yeah.
Right, okay.
So it's concentric circles. No, I'm not going to tell you anything. If you've got Netflix, listener, you can watch it yourself, especially in the UK. I don't know if those territories have it on Netflix, but
one listener can watch it.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to make more of an effort to make our films available on streaming services, because so far we've spent a lot on DVDs. Let's face it. Yeah. And it'd be nice for the listeners to be able to immediately find it and view it, which I think would be good.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, because it's something that I probably would never have got around to watching, because if you haven't heard of it, you're not going to watch it.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna colour your judgment of it or your expectations anymore.
Okay,
Hugh, this has been a wonderful episode. It's been great to be here talking to you live, touching you on the thigh at will.
Yeah, that he did actually just touch my thigh there. Yeah, some definite man touching there with his will.
So yeah, it's been great. I look forward to our next show. I'm really enjoying these podcasts.
So where can they find us on Twitter, Sam?
If you want to find us on Twitter, we're available on Twitter. You can find us at PleaseWatchPod. Where can they email us, Hugh Dempsey?
Well, they can email us at pleasewatchthis.pod at gmail.com, and you can tell us all about what you think of Star Wars, Get Out, Princess Bride,
Raiders of the Lost
Ark, and Empire Strikes Back,
or any other episode later on. So we love you all. You're fantastic.
He loves you all.
You are the wind beneath our wings.
Yeah.
We'll see you all next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.